Well, I had my first question, and it's a very good, valid one. As I stated in one of my in the comment, I'm still working to understand how this Kickstarter project concept works, and I appreciate any positive and negative feedback. You know, the only way we're going to learn anything, or I'm going to learn anything, is to do this trial and error. So the learning curve's kind of skewed. Stellar Frontiers, the premise here is for game mechanics. There's several layers or tiers of it based on what the player wishes to achieve. The basic concept here is you start out with basically a Sim City kind of system where you establish a colony. Your colony ship is equipped with 11 pre-packaged builds, a starport, a factory complex, housing complex, agri-concern, and so forth, along with 10,000 population. Now that population could be diminished if your search for a suitable planet takes longer than the initial 6 cycles. There's a program, or there's a formula in there for starvation and discontent aboard the crew, among the passengers. They're not in stasis, mind you. When your colony ship, once you've chose a planet, your colony ship is dismantled. Therefore, it's no longer in existence. The material used from it is what's used to build the initial colony. Starting at the very beginning, we use the D100 system as well as a sorted D10 rolls to establish planetary growth, population growth, and there's modifiers based off of the ranking. The current ranking system actually goes up to Prince, but I have yet to see anybody reach Duke yet in actual game mechanics, because this is not something that you can do in a few weekends, really. If you really put in time, this is a game that you could play ideally for years. You could probably get bored with it at some point. The beautiful thing about Stellar Frontiers is as long as you keep accurate records, you can set this thing aside and come back 6 months or 6 years later and pick it up right where you left off, as long as you have accurate records. There's a lot of video games out there that can do things similar to this, probably far better, obviously, for obvious reasons. But there's some advantages for pen and paper based system. One of them, as far as I've always been concerned, is it's never, it's not tied to the modern technology system. So if your computer crashes or your power goes off, you can't play your Xbox, but you can always play Stellar Frontiers. You can take it with you wherever you go, although I will acknowledge that your files will develop pretty intensively. I did all this, the first couple incarnations I played my houses with pure paper based, and I collected several folders, a couple inches thick each, over time. Ideally, using a computer or a laptop to keep track of your records is probably best. One of the things I'd like to do down the road is find somebody who's savvy enough to create a basic concept for a computerized version of keeping track of things, because most of the system is set up to actually be computer generated. The potential's there, but we're talking, I don't know, down the road, and a lot more financing than this initial startup concept would see. I know that I have 20, 30 boxes sitting at my mother's garage in storage. I'll ask you to forgive the poor quality of the video and the lighting. It's nighttime. I am currently in a mobile residence because of circumstances in my life. I'm just one step away from being homeless, I guess. No good writer succeeds without suffering. I read that someplace. So, I'm not asking for your sympathy. We won't bring that up again. The base concept here is your house lord or lady starts out as a squire. Now, there are 6 personalities to begin with, maybe 10 or 12 if you choose to add extras. There's ministers for culture, education, for health, for defense. These are NPCs that you generate, and each one gets experience and ranking. So they start out at a certain rank. The ranking system is untried, tried, green, and so forth. There are higher end limits to the experience pool, I guess, if you will. This isn't Dungeons and Dragons. You're not going to see thousands and tens of thousands or millions of experience points. Your military units can actually get up to elite status and imperial grade status, and then at that point, from there on, they don't increase in ability. Although in combat and attrition, you'll find that replacements have a tendency to, because there's a set of mechanics that allow the military units to degrade based off of losses and so forth. Back to the initial concept here. We settle a colony. I'm going to use my scout ships and or my shuttle to fully explore the planet. There's a set of charts for planetary exploration, another set of charts for random encounters that occur on your planet. You have the ability to explore and settle additional planets. As a matter of fact, the mechanics are designed to help build you a stellar empire. If you don't settle other planets will come to you asking for protection. And you also have a group of NPCs or sponsors that sponsored your colonial effort called Platinums. These are the one percenters of the Stellar Frontiers, the wealthy people who, for whatever reasons, came along for the ride and are trying to build their own little economic guild empires along with you. And they can be exploited. You can negotiate with them, interact with them. I've seen players do very basic stuff and enjoy it. And I've also seen a couple guys do some very extensive story-based stuff. I actually have quite a bit of one fellow, Shannon Ackerberg, who created his house Hathion. He come up with the aviaries. It's an avian-based human genome, and the storylines are so intensive and so in depth. Him and I actually have been collaborating on writing a series of novels. I'm in the process of trying to type the first novel, which is about 1,100 pages of handwritten material. And it's between that and doing this, it takes a lot of time. And I hope to have the first installment. We've actually written 2.5 novels based off of his House Hathion. I also have one novel that I wrote 10 years back that's based in the Stellar Frontiers world. As a matter of fact, it's from that novel that I got the concept for making the game. Like I said previously, I was in a situation where I didn't have access to Xbox. We couldn't sit around the table and play Dungeons and Dragons because it was frowned upon. This put me in the mindset to say, okay, I want to entertain myself. I'm a geek and I like this sort of thing. And so I created this game system from the scratch, from the initial, to serve my own purpose, to meet my needs first. And then I had other people come along and go, hey, what are you doing? And I gave them copies. And of course, the initial first edition, if you will, the very first basic set, is a couple pamphlet-sized books, maybe this big, and mostly rough material. I have those. If somebody's interested and they want a copy of that and they want to sponsor it for a copy, I'll give you a copy of it. I mean, it's far from where I'm at now. Then I have a second edition, if you will, a second beta that's easily 2 books this thick, and that came along about 4 years later. One of the things I was doing in the initial days was I was ad-libbing things as we went along. Somebody'd come along, well, how do I do this? How can my house do that? How can I exploit this? And I'd have to come up with, well, here's what you do, and here we do this. And then I realized, I need to write that down. In order for it to be consistent, it's best to have written rules. That way everybody's on the same page. And so we progress to the final product we have. And the product is pretty much as good as I can make it, short of having a professional editor come in and vet it. And I don't have the finances to do that. I've done my best. I've done more than my best. I've never spent so much time working on a project in my life. I've never been so driven to see something completed. This is my legacy, folks. It's not about the money. It's something I can leave behind and other people can enjoy, and I enjoy it and my friends enjoyed it. associates enjoyed it, and some strangers enjoyed it. And I would like to see more people have it on their shelf. And if it's one of those things that you can play here and there, or you can take off the shelf every day. It's up to you. You know, I imagine I'll have to do a little bit more videos than this. I don't want to over swamp because I could go on for a half an hour. Uh, and I know I'm up on a tangent here, I guess. Like I said, the base concept here is you establish a colony. You have 10 builds, 11 builds. You have a number of starships. They move at they're low-tech ships, Tech 1. You have the ability to, there's a research blueprint. Okay, there's a tech tree. Okay, you develop a research facility. It's not something that comes with the package. You have to build this. There's lots of other factories, better housing, better everything that you research and develop and build. Or you convince others to build it for you. You negotiate with platinums and convince them to do it for you. And through doing so, you build up and you expand your particular colony. You also build a military because there are bad guys. There are good guys. I have an entire chapter called Op4, the Opposing Forces chapter, and it covers everything from guilds to mercenaries to pirate lords to gutter gangs and slavers and you name it. And each one has its own set of charts and rules, and based off of your house lord's status, it determines how big or how bad they're going to be. Obviously, a squire who's just starting out is not going to be prepared to deal with a battalion of mercenaries jumping on their planet, or a high-level elite category guild master who's corrupt and wants to take over his agri concerns. So there's a huge modifier base. So as an example, at Squire, there's an automatic -50 to all your rolls for these particular types of events. That's not applied to encounter events because it's a different set of charts. But if you want to negotiate with somebody, the rules and the mechanics are there to allow for. There's also a whole chapter on spies. There's a whole ability to spy on your neighbors, on your neighboring NPCs, on your own platinums if necessary. The mechanics are there. It developed out of our second or third generation game system when I had a couple players who really started to go at each other, and they wanted to know how can I steal blueprints from the other guy? How can I mess with his stuff? And this is how it came out, because a good concealed dagger is worth a battalion of war knights. And as for the combat system is fairly extensive. Once again, it's a rolling curve. You can do some pretty basic stuff and just set a base set of numbers based off of the skill and their firepower versus the opposing side, and make a couple quick rolls and bang, you either have won or you lost. Or you and some friends could lay out, a tabletop map system and fight this thing out. A dozen other game systems I can think of. I did borrow quite a bit from the BattleTech concept when it comes to my War Knights, but there's no plagiarism there. It's different enough to be original. Less original than Pathfinder compared to Dungeons and Dragons. No offense to your Pathfinder fans, it's what it is. There you go. Hope that's answered a few questions. I'm sure there's more, and I'm more than willing to try to answer whatever I can. Until the next one, keep your head up.